I'm Zachary Cartwright. This is Water and Food. Today, my guest is Suresh Chandler, who's the R&D lead at Arboreal Stevia. He is here today to discuss what stevia is, some of the misconceptions about it, and how stevia is used in the food industry. He also discusses some of the advantages and disadvantages of using this sugar substitute. Let's hear what Suresh has to say on this episode of Water and Food. All right, hey Suresh, welcome to Water and Food. Thank you for being here today. I know we've been talking about having you on for a long time, so I'm happy that we can finally get together.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks for inviting me to this podcast, and I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting discussion where we are going to talk more about stevia today.
And I appreciate you being here. I know it's quite a big time difference. I believe it's 8 p.m. there and 9:30 a.m. Where you're at. So good morning. And I just want to start off by asking you, what is stevia? Why are you here today to talk about this product?
Right. So I represent Arboreal Bioinnovations. So we are a stevia manufacturing company. And so I'm interested in educating people more about stevia, right? So stevia is actually a high intensity natural sweetener, which is actually extracted from stevia leaves, right? The stevia leaves comes from a plant known as Stevia rebaudiana battoni, which is actually a native to South America. So it is completely zero calorie, clean label, and a very sustainable sweetener, right? So I represent India, right? So India is a diabetic capital. So India is a typical case study where how junk foods, lifestyle-based disorders can be life-threatening one, right? So we are actually sitting on the capital of diabetes. That's where it makes stevia more relevant and my company more relevant to offer such kind of sugar reduced product and low calorie products, particularly in India.
And when you first reached out and we first started talking about doing this podcast, you mentioned that there are some misconceptions about stevia out there. What are some of those misconceptions?
So when it comes to stevia, people often think that like any other ingredient, more purer the ingredient, it's always better, right? But actually, to be frank, there is not much correlation between the purity of the extract and the taste performance in a particular recipe, right? So stevia extracts behave more like a flavor than a sweetener, right? Different stevia glycosides present in stevia extracts, they interact a bit differently. And according to the target food matrix and unique flavors, they work a bit differently. So for example, there is a standard pure Rebe 60% extract, right? It also contains other molecules beyond rabidoside A. It also contains stevioside and other components like Reb C or Reb B, right? So what happens is that works very good for citrus based applications. Right. But on the other hand, for tomato ketchup, right, Rabia 80 works. So it's not always that just the purer extracts like Rabia 99 works really well for, beverages or certain applications. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions I wanted to actually address. And the second important thing is, many people think stevia is actually very expensive. So I would say the answer is yes and a no, right? So if you, on a kg basis, stevia is somewhere ranks between $50 to, it ranges up to $250 to $300. But what happens is the concentration of stevia in the final product, it's like relatively less. You're going to use somewhere between 0.02 to lesser than 0.05% in many applications, right? So in certain cases, stevia can also offer a cost reduction, right? When I say it is more expensive, yes, stevia is a naturally derived product, right? So we have to extract it from the stevia leaves. So comparing to other artificial sweeteners like aspartame and sucralose, which are much more cheaper to synthesize, stevia takes a little bit of a backseat over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you compare to the current artificial sweeteners out there, because that's how industry people compare in terms of cost, right? So stevia is not always expensive. Uh, it depends on the use case, right, and what customer wants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you're working for a company that is producing stevia. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your company and where you're located and how long you've been in business?
Right. So I work for Arboreal. So Arboreal Bioinnovation. So Arboreal is a global ingredient solutions company, right? So Arboreal was actually founded in 2015 by Swati Pandey. So she's an IIT graduate and an Imperial College London graduate. And the other co-founder is Manish Chauhan. So he's also from London Business School, and he also completed his bachelor's from BITS Pilani, another reputed institute from India. Right. Ever since we have started, we have 100% focused on developing a vertically integrated stevia manufacturing company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where Arboreal takes a very unique approach, where it actually curates and controls every step of stevia value chain, right from cultivation of stevia saplings to the extraction process of the sweet compounds, and also to develop a ready-made solutions and with an affordable cost, at the same time with greater performance,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to add more about it, we also have a full-fledged application center, global application center situated in northern part of India, which is Lucknow. And then we also have an excellence center in Chennai, which is just dedicated only for developing low-calorie products, particularly based out of stevia. So we have been able to make stevia work,
Mm-hmm.
and we also have been able to customize stevia solutions where where many other players were not able to do. So in the past 3 months, we have worked close to almost 55 plus brands, and we have helped them launch their product with our stevia and through our dedicated formulations program.
And in your role there, Suresh, you're an R&D lead. Is that correct? What do you do in your specific role, and how did you end up there? What was your journey to ending up with Arboreal Stevia?
So that's actually an very interesting discussion to have. So basically, I graduated from University of Helsinki, Finland, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was very much of an awakening moment during my masters. So where I got exposed to new technologies and the new age ingredients, which unfortunately I didn't get during my bachelor's, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm from a biotechnology background. So from biotech to a food tech, it's a big transition, right? So from there onwards, I decided that I want to be in the functional ingredient space. So that was the starting point.
Mm-hmm.
So then I had to return back to India, and I chose an opportunity in product development, right? So during my masters only, so I was very much sure that I want to be in product development and applications, particularly in product innovations, right? So that was the start. And when I came back to India, the new age companies were like less in number back in 2014, right? So then the opportunities were also pretty much less comparing to other countries, right? Because R&D is something that is R&D drive has been much more better in the last 10 years. So then that's where I chose an opportunity in R&D. Then I was actually continuously looking for this new age companies and companies who are creating actually functional ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I stumbled upon Arboreal, and I joined Arboreal, right? So I was one of the early members to join Arboreal, because the first few years of Arboreal is all about farming and backward integration. So then they mastered the manufacturing process. on the verge of scaling up of the manufacturing process, that's where they realized, we need to have an customized formulation support, and that's where I came into picture, right? So we literally started from a small room where we started with small formulations, and now we have now two dedicated centers for R&D. So it's been a big journey in the last 4 years, right? So that's how I ended up in this space. And to be frank, the sweetener space as such, it's a very gray area, right? Not much of knowledge is out there. Yes, there are like a lot of publications, and academia is aware about, and academia is already aware. But what happens is when it comes to industrial applications, more about commercialization, and it should be affordable, right? So that's where Arboreal comes into place, and we have developed proprietary and customized solutions for different matrices.
And you mentioned that you've worked with maybe 50 or more brands and types of products. Generally, what types of products does your company work with where companies are replacing sugar with stevia? What types of products are these?
So generally, two important queries comes to us, right? First is for 100% sugar reduction. Next is they want to launch a low calorie product. They want to have sugar, but they want to reduce the amount of sugar, maybe at 25% level or 50% level. So these are the two important classifications of queries we receive. And with regards to product range, we get a range of products, right? Protein powders, protein beverages, plant-based applications, chocolates, confectionery. The application is, we receive a very broad spectrum of requests. But obviously, beverages are the lowest hanging fruit. And when it comes to cost, beverage manufacturers are, much more adaptable. And that is the first thing, any country and any sugar reduction happens from beverages, right? Because many other product categories have a deeper sugar reduction. For example, in bakery, there is close to 30 to 40% of sugar. In chocolates, it's more than 30 to 40%, right? So here, these are like very, very sensitive categories. So that the transition for sugar reduction in these categories are much more lesser than in beverages. So most of the queries in the initial days we received were from actually beverage companies.
And you've mentioned some of the advantages of using stevia, maybe cost reduction, or if you're trying to make a low calorie product and so on. What are some of the cons or maybe some of the difficulties with working with stevia, and anything that comes to mind?
So I think this is also a very important part of addressing sugar reduction, right? So any sugar reduction, right, comes with lot of formulation challenges. So first is like beyond sweetness, sucrose actually adds like a lot of functional properties to the foods and beverages, like texture, mouth feel, shelf life. So substituting these unique properties of sucrose has been always an challenging thing, right? As a product developer, you have to possibly ask some of the key questions when it comes to reformulation or developing a new product, right? So I take this 5-question approach, right? So which category of food product it belongs to, and what are the regulatory challenges particularly associated with that particular food product? Second question is, what are the physical and sensorial properties that is expected of the existing product or existed or expected to replace when replacing or when you are substituting sugar? Third important question is, what is the percentage of calorie reduction you are actually expecting, right? Fourth is like percentage of sucrose replacement you want to achieve. Sometimes people also try to compensate. They will completely eliminate sugar, and they will sometimes they replace it with fibers or other polyols, right? So that's where it's very important to understand how much percentage of sucrose you exactly want to reduce. The fifth important point is, what are the parameters that will affect the core qualities of the product, like color, texture, and appearance, right? So when you're reducing sugar, like there are a lot of things that actually gets compromised, right? So in order to compromise such qualities, you might have to get these qualities from other sources. Sometimes you might have to use a color, sometimes you might have to use certain flavors to match the same product, right? So these are the important challenges we actually address on a daily basis, right? But when it comes to using stevia, uh, yes, stevia naturally has an aftertaste and a lingering effect. But the thing is, the question is whether the lingering or the aftertaste, is it desirable or not, or is it pleasant or not, and how far we want to go, right? So that's the point. It's so during early stage of stevia based products, yes, there were like a lot of lingering and other things. But with this new age solutions and whatever there is a range of ingredients and toolbox that we have developed, that has been helped us to reduce or completely eliminate these aftertaste or the lingering that you actually get from stevia. So I mean, these are the important problems we generally address. And sometimes people also think that the more concentration of stevia, the better the sweetness, right? So here is a very very important part to address. So many people think that sweeteners, like sugar, when you increase the concentration, the sweetness increase linearly. But when it comes to stevia, beyond a certain point, the sweetness will not increase, right?
Mhm.
So you need to understand the threshold of the dosage and the matrix. So then you have to optimize and customize those molecules accordingly.
Yeah, and I
So
really
this
like
has been the
that five question approach. I really like that because if you're meeting with a client and trying to help them understand, maybe if they want to use stevia, these are the things to keep in mind. And it's showing that if they're using sucrose or table sugar, there's a lot of functionality there that I think a lot of people don't think about right away when they're trying to make a sugar substitution. So I really like that process, and I'm sure it's really helpful for when you meet with clients and help direct them to using your products. What are some of the challenges related to the production of stevia itself? You mentioned your company, something that's really helped it to shine and maybe do better than other companies is the ability to produce successfully. But what are some of those challenges that your team had to overcome in order to produce stevia?
Yeah. So, value creation is actually the bedrock of, any business, right? So, when it comes to addressing challenges, so we have channelized our efforts at three levels. First is the farming and supply chain, right? So when it comes to farming and supply chain, so that's where, as I initially mentioned, like we have spent our initial year perfecting the agribit, right? So that makes us a vertically integrated stevia supplier. And also we have control over every step of the value chain, right from the sourcing to the extraction to the manufacturing of the final product. So this part of business is very important because it helps us to have a complete control over the product. And also, many times due to some seasonal changes also, in for many other companies, the production gets stuck, or sometimes they might have to increase the cost. So this has helped us to have a control over the economics of the product as well. The second important challenge, many when it comes to stevia suppliers, is the formulation expertise, right? It's not just about the producing the final product and just selling it, but many a times, stevia needs to be customized according to the target product, right? Stevia is not a single molecule. It is actually a cocktail of more than 50 molecules, right? Based on the relative composition of the stevia mixture, the taste and the performance of the solution varies, right? So good understanding of the molecules is very critical. So this helps us designing a very superior yet an economical solution. The third is the core answer for your question, right? What are the major process challenges? So journey of the ingredient and how it gets converted into a final product is essentially a very important aspect, and it is very relevant to the current scenario where people are talking about the sustainability, and when customers are also very much interested in knowing how the ingredients are getting processed and how it is going to affect their final after consumption, right? So that's where like our proprietary extraction process, where we do not use much of harsh chemicals, and our optimized process also helps to have a better isolation of the molecule and better recovery, right? So yes, so these are the three important areas we have actually added more value, and that's where our science driven approach has helped us to get better performance at each levels.
Mm-hmm. And do you ever run into any difficulties with production? I know you're probably doing some type of spray drying. What does your spray dry process look like? And are you measuring moisture or water activity during that spray drying process to hit a certain target for your production?
Yeah, as so TBA involves an aqueous extraction process, right? And after removing all those impurities, and based on the target grade you wanted to manufacture, so the concentration of the aqueous solution happens, and then the final product is actually spray dried.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge here is every time the first level of challenge you will face in optimizing the cocktail of stevia mixture, right? So we know that, let's say we are going to produce rhabdioside 60. So the rhabdioside 60 means 60 percentage of stevia extract will be uh, composed by rhabdioside A. The remaining 40 percentage might be a cocktail of different molecules like steviosides and other steviol glycoside molecules, right? This is the first level challenge. The second level challenge is optimizing the moisture. So whenever you're going to spray dry it, so the moisture is going to certainly differ, right? So let's say even if there is 1% more moisture also, that is going to actually affect the sweetness, and certainly that will also be affecting the final concentration of the certain molecules, right? So that's where moisture control is very critical component in manufacturing of stevia, pure stevia extracts.
And when you take a moisture measurement, how does your team do it? Are you using a loss on drying method or a titration, or how do you get that moisture number?
So we basically do a two-step approach. So we basically do a loss on drying method,
Mm-hmm.
and we also adapt a titration method. And what we also do is we also collaborate with a third-party laboratory to validate all our results.
Mm-hmm.
So by this way, our results are more robust when it comes to the moisture management.
I see. And the reason that I'm asking about this, Suresh, is because I see a lot of people in your industry who try to use a moisture content measurement, to control moisture and prevent clumping, or just to really understand your product and hit a consistent target. And this actually relates to a webinar that we recently released here, where we talk about substituting sugar, and we look at some of the pros and cons of different alternatives, including stevia. And we talk about how they relate not only to moisture, but also to water activity. And then also a lot about the functionality that you mentioned. If you're having to reduce the amount of sugar, then you do have to think about these other things. Do you still need browning to occur, or are you still going for a certain mouthfeel, or what about shelf life, and so on. And so I just wanted to take a moment and, recommend that webinar. It's something that we can add a link to this podcast to, because I do think that you, even at your company, and people in your industry may really benefit from that webinar. So it just happened to be perfect timing that your subject matter fell in line with other things that we've been working on. So I just wanted to make sure to mention that.
Absolutely, that is actually spot on, Zach. So that's what I was actually talking about in the first part of the discussion, right? These things are like very, very relevant when it comes to, when it comes to sugar, right? So at each moisture level and at each temperature, so it exhibits different properties, right? And the understanding of moisture versus sweetness, and particularly in the final product, the understanding has been fairly less, right? So as I told, still this is more in a gray area. So that's where, these kind of discussions, will prompt researchers and product developers to think in that line, and it gives a spotlight to that part.
Mhm. And Suresh, what's next for you, and what's next for your company? Maybe looking into next year and down the road, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to as your company grows?
Right. So, Arboreal wants to, shine as a functional ingredient company, right? So we have taken up more sustainable production processes and ingredients that we are currently in R&D pipeline. So you guys will be getting more news in the coming days. But yeah, so we'll be extending our portfolio of ingredients that actually enhances the performance of the food, and performance of human nutrition. So we are actually working on that line. So so this is a gist I'll be able to reveal at this part.
And then finally, we get a lot of other food scientists that listen to this podcast. If there's somebody out there listening who's working on a project and they're trying to reduce sugar or have a lower calorie version of their product, and they're thinking about using stevia, how can they get a hold of you or your company? What's the best way for them to collaborate with you?
So, when it comes to collaboration, like we generally, for example, I'll share you a very classical example. So there was a company who wanted to launch a protein product where they wanted to incorporate stevia. So where where they have completed like 50% of their product development, and they were stuck with the sweetener part particularly, right? So they were trying to use artificial sweeteners, but management was not like okay with that. So that's where they approached us. So we requested for a base of unsweetened sample, right? And their kind of a control product, what sometimes they have a benchmark, kind of this product or this level of sweetness they want to match, right? So we we generally have a 2 weeks to 3 weeks dedicated program when it comes to working with companies. We agree with the timelines based on the other projects that is available, and within almost like 1.5 weeks we were able to turn back to the company with a very economical solution, and the product got launched within next 2 months, right? So that quick we are when it comes to customized approach, and when we are working with clients. So they can also reach us through me, so I'll drop by my email ID, and obviously they can also contact through our website. I'll be happy to put with our sales team. So yeah, we can see how we can work together.
Well, perfect. Well, I just want to thank you so much for your time, Suresh. I think we live in a pretty cool world where a food scientist in Washington State can talk to a food scientist in India, and we can collaborate and talk about the things that we work on and how they relate. So I hope this encourage others to also collaborate. And I look forward to seeing how your company grows, and maybe our paths will cross again in the future as your company continues to grow. So I thank you so much for your time, and I think our listeners will really appreciate it as well.
Thank you so much, Zach, actually, for inviting me for such a such a niche discussion, I would say, because these kind of insights are going to be very provocative, and it's going to instill a lot of scientific thoughts when it comes to moisture and how an ingredient and a particular parameter interact. Often when you see a certificate of analysis, often people think that moisture or is as a small part, but it's not actually the thing, right? So what is the most fundamental thing? And as a food scientist, when we have more understanding on how water works, right? I think as a food technologist or a food scientist, we have understood how the world works, right? So I think that's where this podcast, takes a very, very important role. And thanks for this initiative, Zach.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I look forward to talking to you again. Have a good one, Suresh.
Have a great week ahead, Zach.
I'm Zachary Cartwright. This is Water in Food. Find this podcast on Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.